Hey everybody, welcome to beautiful Crested Butte, Colorado. We are here today to report on the brand new Pivot Shuttle AM. This is day 2 of the media camp here, and there's a lot of fun and exciting stuff to talk about, especially the drive unit. You guys are going to be stoked about that, I think. So stay tuned. I'll give you some ride impressions, talk to Chris Cocalis, some of the key members at Pivot involved with making this bike happen, and of course take you out for a ride on some amazing trails in Crested Butte and share some of our first impressions. So let's go for a ride. All right, everyone, so welcome back to Crested Butte, Colorado. Forgive me if I'm a bit twitchy and jumpy. I am getting eaten alive by flies out here, but I'm gonna do my best to stay still as I talk about the brand new Pivot Shuttle AM. So the new Shuttle AM is a 148 mil rear travel, 160 front wheel travel, electrified version of the Switchblade, which is a bike that we absolutely love, one of my favorites. So I was quite excited to hear a lot of the ride characteristics, from suspension, shock tune, kinematics, to even the tuned in frame stiffness were mimicked on this bike. If you remember our eBike Shootout, a couple of months back, the LT won an award from several members in our staff and was rated one of our favorite long travel e-bikes of the year. So we were very excited to see what the new AM would be all about. In terms of drive unit and spec features this year, SRAM drivetrain. Traditionally, Pivot has mostly gone with Shimano and also used Shimano drive unit. The new AM features the Bosch drive unit. It has the Performance Line CX in several of the models, and it has the race option for one particular model, which is the top of the line model. We'll talk with Josh from Bosch, that rhymes, and get a little bit more of the details on exactly what's different about that race motor. Oh, this is awesome. All right, so being that this camp was a bit of a whirlwind and I've got to get on a flight, I haven't been able to totally memorize all the geo numbers, so forgive me for looking at my phone here, but I'm going to reference that just to make sure I don't misspeak on any of the key numbers here. We tested a size large. These bikes do have a high and low flip chip, so you can adjust the geometry as needed. Right now I will be reading the numbers to you in the low mode because that's what we rode so far on this trip. Size large has a reach of 476 millimeters. It's 480 when you put the bike in the high position. Stack height in low is 651 with a 1270 millimeter wheelbase, 444 millimeter chainstays, 64.1 degree head tube angle, a seat tube angle of 76.4 degrees, and a bottom bracket height of 34.5 millimeters. So by and large, again, keeping in tune with the all mountain kind of do it all vibe, the Switchblade of the e-world. It offers a pretty balanced geo set and is going to mean that it's not going to be too radical or polarizing on either end of the spectrum, but will allow riders to push the limits and also not feel like they're riding, you know, just a really muted stretch limousine on the flatter, more mellow trails so many people find themselves riding. Kevin, how long have you worked with Pivot and what do you do?
I've been with Pivot from the beginning.
Yeah.
I'm just the head of engineering.
That's all. Just a lowly head of engineer.
Yep.
So what were your roles in the new Shuttle AM?
Just a lot of work in the beginning, getting all the geometry right, making sure, you know, we look at what we're going to do with wiring and cable routing and all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. Getting all that stuff laid out, and then throughout the whole process, just kind of overseeing the full design work of it. I also designed the prototype for this bike concurrently.
How long ago was that?
2 years ago.
Okay.
Maybe more.
Okay.
3.
All right. Can you talk to us a little bit about the progression of the bike, suspension kinematics, kind of where you wanted this bike to fit in and how you wanted it to ride?
Yeah, I mean, really the goal was to have it feel like the Switchblade.
Okay.
Which is, I would say, a little more progressive than the previous Shuttle AM.
Okay.
But that was really the goal, was to get things just kind of dialed. That Switchblade is so awesome the way it feels everywhere. So we kind of had an easy target to get. So.
Okay. Right on, man. Well, so far it's been a blast. So thank you for making a rad bike. We're having fun.
Yeah, always.
All right, let's go hit the trails and get a little more trail time on this thing. Out here climbing the new Shuttle AM, enjoying some beautiful views. All right, so as I said, suspension kinematic and shock tune. We actually were lucky enough to have someone from Fox here as well, and I spent quite a bit of time talking with him, playing around with volume reducers and the fork and shock, and just getting to know what the shock tune and the kinematic on this bike was all about. Very similar, if not actually almost identical, we were told, to what's on that Switchblade. So if you've ridden a Switchblade or you've heard people talk about how much they like a Switchblade, you're gonna be happy there. So comparing it to the Shuttle LT, which is one of my absolute favorite e-bikes, I would say that the shock doesn't feel quite as lively and springy, almost hyperactive, you could say, but it is still a very light and lively riding bike. But I think a lot of it has to do with the difference in travel, right? 148 millimeters compared to 160. I think that longer travel bike is just gonna be a little bit more smoother and supple because you've got more travel to work with. That being said, I did feel a difference when it came time to ride some of the more flowier, bermy, tight technical trails. This bike was very nimble, very fast. It still liked to pop and play around quite a bit. So I was definitely impressed so far with how that performed. So the higher end models come with a 750 watt-hour battery, whereas the lower priced ride bike comes with a 625 watt-hour battery. The battery mounting points inside the bikes are universal, so if you do buy the ride spec bike and down the road you do want to upgrade to the larger 750 battery, you can do that. We have heard Bosch is also working on a range extender. I think it's around 200 watt hours, so that will greatly increase the range of the bike, and could be something that you big epic guys will be looking forward to. I will say today we rode almost 30 miles, did well over 4,000 feet of climbing with a lot of that time in turbo, and came back with over 10% battery. So that's a pretty big ride, and at 190 pounds, I was pretty impressed with how far I got. So moving into spec, there is the ride kit, which is SLX XT, performance level suspension. You've got the Pro XO, which has the SRAM Eagle T-type drive unit, and you've got the Team XX Eagle, which is the model I'm riding here. It is the most expensive, has XTR brakes, the XX T-type transmission, and the carbon wheels from DT Swiss, which were absolutely awesome in railing some stiff corners today. Price on this bike here is $13,999. You step down to the Pro at $11,799. And the Ride SLX XT bike comes in at $89.99, so a pretty decent range there from 9,000 up to 14. All right, so this is Cocalis Ridge. We're gonna be climbing way up to there. I did a ride-along video on this trail, so check it out for more of a recap, but definitely a worth doing here. All right, everybody, so we just finished up our second ride here. We're with Chris Cocalis, CEO of Pivot Cycles. Chris, there's obviously some big changes to this bike. Can you tell us what were some of the big goals and things you're most excited of with the new AM?
Well, the outgoing Shuttle AM had really kind of morphed into something between what is now the Shuttle LT and what the original Shuttle was. So the new one, we really wanted to kind of get back to the original Shuttle, that bike that was the electrified version of our Switchblade. When we launched the original Shuttle in 2017, that that was the goal, to basically make an e-bike that behaved like our Switchblade, rode like our Switchblade, and we achieved that for that Switchblade at that time. And the new bike pretty much does it again. So
Yeah.
that was our goal.
And for a number of years, you guys have been pretty tightly tied with Shimano, from drive unit to drivetrain components. We see a big mix up here, right? I mean,
Well, this one has Shimano brakes.
It does have Shimano. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I mean, we had SRAM T-type drivetrain.
Yeah.
We've got a Bosch drive unit, which I think is the big thing to talk about. Why the switch to Bosch?
Well, we've literally been talking to Bosch since the beginning of the first e-bike. And back then, the original Bosch system wasn't really made for mountain biking. People were trying to adapt it to that, but it had that small front sprocket on it. And it just really didn't work with kinematics. You couldn't pedal the bike beyond 20 miles an hour if your battery died.
Right.
You couldn't pedal the bike. You were really, it was not the best system at the time. And then, because we worked with Shimano over the years so closely, we were really in from the beginning on the E8000 drive unit. And so when we did that, it kind of locked us in of the path
Right.
of, okay, our frames are developed for this, and then EP8 coming and everything. So that it was just kind of the development process. But we always kept looking at Bosch, communicating with Bosch, and pretty open about it too. Even the last generation of Bosch, just the remotes, the size of the cables on the handlebars, there was just the motor worked great.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, beyond that, there was some things that just ergonomically didn't really fit Pivot.
Sure.
And now that's pretty radically changed. I
Yeah.
mean, they've kind of gone the other direction of,
Very minimalist, yeah.
yeah, no wires on the handlebars. It's to match what they already had going with their CX, Performance CX drive unit.
Right. One thing that I really noticed today, and we talked about a little on the trail, was how much I loved steering this bike from the rear end. Like, you know, obviously when you're riding stuff blind, you sometimes go into things a little too quick.
Yep.
And, you know, you'd enter a corner in your nice normal bank, and then all of a sudden you'd see it just do that. And I just found it so easy to just use my feet and my hips and just get that back end to maneuver. And you told me that you actually made the chainstays a little longer than the outgoing, or no, longer than the LT.
And the outgoing, yeah.
And the outgoing.
Yeah.
But the bike is still very lively and playful and nimble.
Yeah, a lot of that
How'd
is
you
the
do all
battery placement. Because we wanted it to ride like the Switchblade and the LT like the Firebird. The stiffness of a Firebird front triangle is very pro-level stiffness. There's no flex in the front triangle, and when you point it, it goes in that direction, but you also have to be able to, when you're tired, it's not as easy to wrangle that around, and the Switchblade is a step off of that. It makes every person feel like a superhero. When you get a big down tube, big battery, all that stuff, it's sometimes actually difficult to get that feel out of the frame. And so with this, all the layups and everything, the front triangle, what would be the bottom bracket stiffness and everything are actually identical to the Switchblade.
Oh, really?
And it's all with the layups, and then also the materials we used for the battery mounts. So those are composite nylon type material instead of metal brackets, which mount the batteries on some of the other bikes.
Right.
And so all of that really went into giving that bike that feel. So when you kind of load it up into a corner, it does not feel like an e-bike. You can just take it and throw it around the way you want it to. And the battery's super low as well, so being able to manual it up. And honestly, part of the reason to make the chainstay a little longer is because the Bosch motor is a little bit bigger, and keeping tire clearance and everything, that's kind of what we needed to do.
Yeah.
But when you get to that turbo and then the race mode, the Bosch motors are a little bit more powerful in those areas, and having a little bit more chainstay does keep that wheel on the ground better on straight lines.
Yeah. So obviously this is the first Pivot bike with a Bosch drive unit.
Yep.
This decision didn't happen overnight. So talk to us about how long, it takes for an OEM partner to work with Bosch and what you guys were working on.
Yeah, we start out talking, just like they're talking about with all the motor systems, and we start supplying CAD and technical data. And that's usually the first step, is they'll look to see how they can integrate it in, especially on full suspension mountain bikes, how it fits into the frame. Do they get the kinematics they like, especially chains they like? That's always important. So that's kind of the first step that goes in, and then we keep talking and develop out and do some ride testing together. So it could take anywhere from a year to 3 years. It also depends upon their engineering capacity, how quickly they can design something from scratch.
Okay. So for people that are, wondering about, should I buy a race bike or not, right? And just stick with a Performance Line CX. We already talked about there's only 500 race drive units available per brand, right? So it is a premium tier product. But could you talk about really what the differences are to the internals? I mean, you don't maybe have to go into crazy detail, but what is the rider going to notice on the trail?
The biggest thing that they're going to notice is in race mode, you get 400% assistance. You get really quick engagement of the motor with just a very light touch of the pedal. So the torque sensitivity is really up there. And then you also get a little bit longer but extended boost, which helps you get over rocks and stuff. It does take a little bit to get used to. So those are the main differences between the race mode and the CX.
Okay.
So that'd be the thing. Once you start going back and go to turbo or eMTB, you're getting very similar performance characteristics.
Sure. And 400% on race mode. What is turbo?
Turbo goes up to 340.
Okay.
Yep.
So you are getting a bit more all-out assistance. So for like the steepest of climbs, or if you're wanting to go on a slight upgrade fire road or a flat fire road, you'll have a little more assistance.
Yep. Yeah.
Because obviously it's still cutting out at 20 miles an hour.
Yep. Yeah.
But it just gets you there quicker.
Yep. It'll get you there quicker. As soon as you put your foot on the pedal, it's that sensitive and you'll get going. It reacts really quick. Extended boost helps quite a lot. You'll hear it. It'll rotate about 3.5, 4 seconds, so a little bit more. So you don't have to pedal as much, and you can kind of tippling is what the Germans call it, but do that ratcheting of the pedal. So going through rock gardens, you're not getting the pedal strikes.
Okay. So you heard some of my impressions from the trail, climbing, general handling. I'll kind of give you my first impressions, my takeaway after a couple of days of riding on the Shuttle AM. So far, I'm quite impressed. I felt after doing a little bit of suspension tuning, this bike really started to fit me and suit me and my preference a lot more. I look forward to getting one back home for even more tweaking and tuning on the suspension, but I see a lot of great promise in this bike. I really like the way this bike corners and handles in like higher speed turns where you're kind of slamming the bike into stuff. I could feel the way that this bike would kind of load into corners and snap out nicely. It does a good job of getting airborne and pre-hopping stuff, getting over obstacles. It weighs, I think, just over like right around that 50-pound mark. So, it's on par with a lot of other bikes. But it's a pretty lively suspension feel. So hitting stuff and popping up and over was really effortless. I loved steering this bike from the back end. Like I said earlier, coming into corners and just using your feet and your hips to snap the bike around. It was so predictable, so stable when you got this thing sideways. So if you're someone who likes to get that back end out around, you're gonna have a blast on this bike. Climbing, I talked about on the trail, efficient, comfortable position, does a good job keeping that front tire down, supple, but still a pretty efficient suspension platform. And overall, I think it's a really solid bike. Again, it's only 2 days. It's not our long-term review. There's still lots of stuff we want to spend more time, working on and testing and trying out. But so far, I'm impressed. I think Pivot's done a good job coming back out with an improvement to the last generation shuttle and a nice complement to the Shuttle LT for those who don't need that much travel, and for somebody who, you know, is looking for a little more than what the Shuttle SL offers. So thank you guys very much for watching the video. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions, please ask them down below. We love getting involved in the comments with you guys. So if there's something we can't answer, we will be sure to reach out to Bosch, Pivot, or Fox and do what we can to get a response back to you guys. So thank you guys very much for watching, and we hope to see you out on the trails.